supplementation.
Was obsessed with protein, right? They think that that's the new healthy.
A bit of a minefield to run through.
We should always take a food first approach.
That's really interesting.
You know, we're seduced by unhealthy food.
Low mood and a certain, well, obviously it's not all down to the mineral.
I've turned everybody off protein bars.
My biggest struggle was cheese. Welcome back to the Not Quite Pod. Today we've got Rob with us. Rob, do you just quickly want to introduce yourself and let everyone know a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Rob Hobson. I'm a registered nutritionist, registered sport nutritionist, and author of the new book, Unprocessed Your Life. I've been working as a nutritionist for 20 years. Lots of different capacities, public health through to working in the media. So yeah, we've got lots to talk about.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this, and I will eventually slot into this what was Lorraine like, but we're going to do that a bit later on.
Too nice.
To start off, what got you into nutrition?
Yeah, so I actually started off, I did a degree in accountancy, and I realised very quickly that that wasn't what I wanted to do. And I just then wanted to follow the things that I was really interested in. So I love food. I've always cooked since I was young. I did cookery at school. I've always been really into sport and fitness. And I just decided that's kind of the route I wanted to go to. But, you know, it took me a while to get there. I did this first degree. I thought that I needed to go off to uni and do something sort of that would get me a secure job as an accountant. And then I sort of realised, you know, you kind of have to follow your dreams a little bit and just, it's a lot of hard work, but you just got to just do it, right? And then do something that you enjoy for the rest of your life.
100%. I think as well, a lot of people, particularly young people coming through now, there's that like wanting to go with the safe option, but not actually fully knowing what you want to do. Because even me coming out of school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea where I was going to end up. And it was kind of what happens next. And I think with degrees and that, I mean, I'm a strong believer of if you need a degree, go and do it. But if you don't, then maybe look at just gaining experience, because now employers don't really... Some employers don't really care if you've got a degree or not. It's more, have you done the job before?
Yeah. You know what, though? You said something really cool a minute ago, and it's like, you know, the excitement is like if you take that leap and take the risk and not really knowing what's going to happen, well, that's the really cool bit. That's how I ended up here. You know, I ended up doing my nutrition degree and working in public health. I used to work with schools, care homes, and nursery age people and vulnerable groups. And then I randomly wrote a book with somebody that, I set up on my own. I set up this little company, first of all, around people with dementia and helping people, care homes, to help older people to eat well. I met somebody, did a bit of consultancy, wrote a cookbook, ended up working in the media, ended up working with food brands. And I've now found myself in the most weirdest situations. I've been flown all over the place to cook for people, writing books, going on Lorraine, doing all these really cool things, because I took that leap of faith and thought, I'm just going to do this. And it cost me a fortune when, to do that. And I had to work all the hours under the sun as a student to try and fund it. But it got me here now, and my job's really exciting.
A lot of jobs now don't have like that, like specialist, like this is what I do. Like yourself, you work in nutrition, but you've got so many different arms of things that you do. It's not like, oh, I go in, I do my nutrition job, but I go home. It's kind of, what am I doing today?
Sometimes that's not a great thing when I'm literally still sat on my phone, like late at night, or always looking at my phone. But I'm really glad that it is the way it is. And you do have to work hard, and you do have to continually reskill yourself. If you work for yourself, then you can't just sit around thinking work's going to come your way. You have to constantly be looking for work, meeting work, finding new little ways that you can make yourself money, looking at all the new niches around nutrition and food. And if you're that kind of person, then definitely you should be working for yourself and just going out there and just seeing what the world's got to offer.
100%, I completely agree. Just on the subject of nutrition, obviously it's your specialist subject, and there's a lot of information out there. We were chatting before saying that there's a lot of mismatched information. Social media has a big part to play in that. But what was your biggest shock when you were doing your initial training in nutrition, learning something that you thought, actually, I would have never thought that in a million years?
To be honest with you, I didn't have that. When I was training, it was almost like quite a new science, nutrition. There weren't that many people doing it. I know that what I got really interested in was the public health, because I was really, I won't say, it's kind of reversed. I was really interested in what was going on around the world in terms of nutrition. It's why I went on to do this master's in public health, because I was shocked at the state of the world and what, people not having access to food, not having access to basic services and all that kind of stuff. And we're such a rich world, and I couldn't believe we're still in this state of like, how are people having to live like this? Not having access to water is a basic necessity. So for me, I think all of that was an eye-opener, and that's what got me interested in that. I think in terms of what has happened since then, I'm still really shocked that people don't have access to healthy food, especially in this country. I mean, I don't know why, people are having to queue for food banks, and I don't know why people are living in food swamps. Kids where there's just the only food they've got access to is junk food. I'm really surprised that people still fall prey to fad diets and health trends. It's been happening for 20 years, and people are still not wanting to follow basic advice and wanting a quick fix and looking for these things that are sold to them. I think that's amazing. And also, I'm really surprised that things haven't changed a massive amount. You just said then we've got access to so much more information, but still, when you look at the data, people are still eating too much fat, salt, sugar, obesity rates are rising. But it's a bit of a paradox, because now we've got access to more healthy versions of food, and we've got access to more information in all sorts of shapes and forms and help, but we're still getting bigger, and less healthy.
I suppose it's that thing of too much information. Like people don't know what's right and what's wrong. I mean, even myself being a bit of a fitness freak, I've done all the fad diets, all the different like protocols, and like you read one article that says, "Oh yes, intermittent fasting is like the next best thing. You should always be doing it," and then you got the next one going, "No, breakfast is the most important meal of the day," and it's kind of like, okay, it's coming to, I think from my perspective, it's like find what works for you, and stick with that, because if the best diet is the one you can stick to. And I know every
Mm,
fitness person ever says that whenever someone goes, how do you stick to a diet, it's like, well, because I don't feel like I'm on a diet.
yeah.
But yeah, that's the constant game. But then also there's arguments to say, like particularly with the rise we've seen in veganism, there's the arguments of like, oh, that's more healthy, when actually no diet's more healthy than another diet. It's just about balancing it all.
Yeah, you're so right, and I love that saying that the best diet is the one you can stick to. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Like, we're all individuals. There's no one size fits all. We have like guidelines as to what constitutes a healthy diet, and they get slagged off all the time by people that have something else to say. But they are the rudiments of healthy eating. Like, eat more high fiber foods, whole grains, lean proteins, plenty of fruits and vegetables. They're the basics. And then from there, it kind of evolves into something that's more specific for you. If you're training for an event, you might want more protein or more carbs. If you've got high cholesterol, there's certain foods that you might want to eat more of or less of. Or, maybe you're going through menopause, and then there's a whole other types of foods that might be better suited to you at that point in time. It's all very different for everybody. And I think the problem is people, especially when it comes to like weight loss stars, they think that what works for one person, their friend, their celebrity, is going to work for them. And the sad thing is, they then put all their faith and energy into this rather than really looking at what's going to work for them, their budget, their cooking skills, their time, their motivation, their all of it, and that's, you really need to sit down and think about where you are, what your life's like, and look at the landscape, and before you even attempt going off plan from what is considered a healthy diet.
Definitely. And I think as well, there's that element of almost that we see in business of like, try everything out and fail at it. If it doesn't work, try something different, because you'll eventually land on something where you go, that works, that makes me feel great, rather than, do you know what? Everyone says stay away from carbs, but when I have carbs, I feel great. So if it works for you and you're eating a balanced diet, great, go for it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm pro carbs. I, like you, I do a lot of exercise. I can't function without lots of carbohydrates in my diet because I'm really busy. I'm running around. It just works for me. It doesn't work for some people, but like you said, you've just got to figure out. Yeah, you just got to figure out what it is that's your vibe, really.
on the topic of diets and fad diets, the other thing that's a very hot topic with everyone is supplementation.
Mm.
It's a bit of a minefield to run through because there's some out there that are definitely there's benefits of, some out there that maybe there aren't so many. Are there any supplements that you would say recommend for pretty much every average Joe out there?
Yeah, it's a funny one, supplements. So they do have a place, right? I do believe they have a place. I've worked with supplement brands in all different capacities. The thing is, you just take them as and when you need them. They're only there to supplement the diet. So if you're worried that your diet isn't quite up to scratch and you're a bit concerned, or you've got kids and you're worried they're fussy eaters and they're not quite, you're worried about their diet, just a basic multivitamin and mineral supplement is enough. You don't even need to spend a lot of money. It'll cost you like, what? A couple of quid, 2, 3 quid a month or something for a basic vitamin and mineral supplement. I think during the winter,
Yep.
a vitamin D is really important because we don't get enough from the sun. If you're vegan, I might suggest that you might want to try B12 because that's quite hard to get from certain foods, but then you might be eating fortified foods to help you with that. If you're pregnant, you take folic acid. There's lots of different reasons. If you're low in iron and you've been told you're low in iron, you take iron. They're there to be used like that. I think what a lot of people do is they think, if I take more, it's going to have more of effect. And the more I take, the better it's going to be. And there's this weird idea that I'm going to get energy from supplements, but actually supplements don't really contain any calories. They don't give you energy. They might help to readdress some balances in the body that make you able
Yeah.
to process food more or feel more alert or whatever it is. But we're sold a lot of promises on the back of supplements, especially really expensive supplements. So you need to not get sucked into it. Like green powders. We don't really need them, but we're made to feel like if we don't take them, then we're not going to be
Yeah.
as healthy as everybody else, or that we desperately need them. But you can eat some green vegetables and take a multivitamin, and it's not going to cost you 50 quid a bag, right?
With the green powders, because we've seen a bit of a rise in that particularly recently. Is it beneficial for someone who's super busy, can't get their greens in? Is there a place for it then, or would you still say it's not worth it?
Listen, if you want, there's nothing wrong with them. So if you want to include them in your diet and they make you feel good and feel better, then knock yourself out. I think there's a lot to be said for just either the placebo effect or just if, like I said, if it makes you feel better, honestly, do it. It's fine. All it is powdered green vegetables. Some have prebiotics, some have probiotics, some have mushrooms and adaptogens and nootropics and all sorts of stuff. My thing is that, you know, you don't, I personally think you can get, I like to think you can get what you need from the diet and maybe that multivitamin. I just think they're very, very expensive. I mean, I actually reviewed a whole load of them for a magazine and I was trying to be really positive, but some of them are like 70 quid a bag for a 1 month supply. And I just don't understand what it is you think you're getting in that bag. And also, what a lot of people do is they think, well, the rest of my diet's really crap. So if I have that, then that makes up for it all. But also, it's not teaching you anything about healthy eating. It's like, and then there's this thing that we're all obsessed with drinking our nutrients, whether it's a protein shake or a green shake or, you've got to start getting into food and enjoying food, right?
Oh, I'm a massive foodie. I say to friends and family all the time, I don't travel for the sun. I'm ginger. My partner's ginger. It's not a good idea. So I travel for food. Food is king. I don't know how. I mean, I did it when because I spent a lot of my early years swimming, so I burned so many calories. So I did it then of like thinking back 2 or 3 protein shakes a day purely to do numbers. But now I'll only go to a protein shake if I really need it because most of the time I'm like I end up hungry in like 20 minutes if I have a protein shake.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I also work as a sports nutritionist, so I do understand the benefits of supplements for sports performance. So some of those are cool. Caffeine is really great. I've worked with endurance athletes and trying to time that caffeine to the point in the race where it's really bad. I've worked with T54 wheelchair sprinters, taking some caffeine before the event because where the bit is in your spine where it's not connected can prevent you from getting that rush of adrenaline. So it's really important to try and replicate that with caffeine in some cases. And then, protein shakes are useful. Creatine can be useful for some athletes, beta alanine, but again, it's timing those supplements and making them relevant to the event because an endurance athlete doesn't need creatine, and whatever it is, a sprinter needs beta alanine or whatever it is. You have to tailor it again, all to the individual to make them relevant.
100%. And I think as well, people get sucked into this whole, we go to the gym a little bit, so now we need to be doing what all high end athletes are
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
And I'm like,
All the gear and
no,
no
just,
idea, I think it's called.
yeah, stick to the game plan. But on the obviously we've talked about like multivitamins, and that's one of the recommendations that you'd make to your average Joe. But there's a lot of information out there to say that multivitamins and a lot of these tablet form vitamins don't actually hold the milligrammage that you would expect. I think everyone sort of goes, oh, every multivitamin and every tablet's the same, when actually that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think just to point out, I think we should always take a food first approach. But then I think these things are useful. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's something called GMP testing, which is good manufacturing processes, and companies that put their supplements through those testing.
Mm.
Theoretically, that is testing a batch to check that it does contain what it contains. So I would look out for that. I don't think you can, aside from that, I don't think you can really assure that it has. But you have to put your trust in the supplement brands to some degree, and I guess some are more trustworthy than others. But I mean, the other issue is how much of it do you actually absorb from the tablet anyway? That's another thing, and I think probiotics are a really good example of this. You take them,
Yeah.
a lot of them don't actually make it down to the gut. So you need to look for one that's maybe been quite well researched. Look on the website. If you take them with hot drinks or hot food, you pretty much wipe out the bacteria as well before it gets in there. So there's different supplements have different effects, and yeah, that absorption thing is quite a big issue.
I wouldn't even thought of that. I've never even come across that before. The temperature of the food that you consume after it has an effect.
I know, and it's funny, isn't it? Because then that can sort of dictate when you take your supplement as well, because you might think, well, I might just take it in between my meals because otherwise I could stop it from making its way down to my gut.
My worst habit is forgetting to take it. I meant to, like, there's certain ones I try to take every day and I always forget. Always forget.
Well, that's really funny because I was thinking about that earlier as well. With the green powders, it's great, but who sticks to taking these every single day? And I think that's one of the things I always think about with everything with nutrition. This is
Mm.
why I always say just get back to the basics and get all that right first. You're not going to stick to a fatty diet for the rest of your life, and you're not going to take a green supplement for the rest of your life. You take half of it, the bag will get dusty and it'll sit in your cupboard and you'll get bored of taking it. So why put all that effort into all that stuff when you could focus on just eating well, making small changes, and getting on that path to longevity than relying on everything else?
Yep. Consistency is key. Like, if you can stick to it, like I always say, because I've got friends and family that are very like calorie obsessed. They're calorie obsessed. It's like, oh, I go one day over and that's it, game over. And I always say to them, focus on weekly, or if anything, focus on monthly. Like, don't worry about it.
The calorie thing is quite an interesting conversation, to be honest. And, a lot of people have different views about calories. I personally think they're quite a useful guide. If you're just trying to roughly work out what to eat, I think they're great. you know, there is at some point getting a deficit of calories will help you to lose weight, but they're not the be all and end all because sometimes the foods, the way they're analyzed, it's no guarantee that is actually the amount of calories in there. People's gut microbiome might be slightly different. We know from research that people who are obese have a slightly different gut microbiome, and that might influence how well those calories are utilized in the body. And also not all calories are created equally, right? If you eat 100 calories of sugar, it's going to have a very different effect on your body than 100 calories of broccoli, and that will affect how hungry you are, your cravings, all that kind of stuff. So there's all these arguments. The problem is all these arguments are what confuse people then when they read them in the papers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it becomes confusing.
Because it was like that. I think I saw it and you just mentioned it there. The whole like calories on a box might not actually be that accurate. I
Yeah.
think it's like there's like a 10, possibly a 10%, up to a 10% discrepancy. to what they actually might be?
Yeah, so a lot of companies will use food composition tables, which are basically they'll have several samples of a certain food and then you get an average. And you have to use those average figures to work out the total calorie content of the product. So even within those, there are probably slight errors. So, I still think they're good to use as a guidance.
Definitely. And talking of like being busy and everyone wanting the quick fix, obviously we live in a really like tired society where everyone's knackered. We're all shattered. We've all got no energy. We're all sinking 3 or 4 coffees a day trying to get through the day. Um, what would you say in terms of, is there certain food, certain supplement that can support someone that's struggling with fatigue?
Yeah, okay. So I think I would probably start by, so I get this quite a lot. Like there's this expression tat, which is tired all the time. And it's actually one of the main reasons people visit their GP. So it is a big issue. And I think what I often find is people come to me and they say, I'm really tired, like constantly tired all the time. And sometimes I look at what they're eating and what their life entails, and it's just that they're actually not eating enough food to start with. So they're not fueling themselves properly. So that is a good place to start. Write down what you're eating, write down what you're doing, and then just check the two. You can't burn the candle at both ends. That's just not going to work. Like you said, I think people rely on caffeine and sugar. So better to think about, healthier snacks instead of reaching for those sugars, because obviously sugar, short-term spikes in sugar and sugar crashes can maybe make you feel more hungry shortly after and leave you feeling more tired and craving more foods. Caffeine, I love caffeine, but I know not to drink too much of it. And also that can impact on your sleep at night. That's going to make you feel more tired the next day. I think if it's your low mood that's also making you tired, because a lot of people have mental health issues, everyone's stress, that comes with the stress and a busy lifestyle. So if that's affecting your appetite, maybe you're feeling quite anxious and you can't eat, well, think about a strategy to help yourself to eat. So it might be that you'd have a number of small meals across the day, or you're living on healthy snacks as an alternative, rather than skipping meals and then feeling really hungry on top of everything else. I definitely recommend a high protein lunch. Carbohydrates for lunch, that mid-afternoon slump, it affects a lot of people. That nodding dog at your computer that we've all had. Um, yeah, I think about that. And then in terms of specific minerals, I mean, iron is quite a big one in this country. Like 27% of women, 50% of teenage girls don't get enough iron in their diet. And iron can lead to tiredness, fatigue, put you at risk of anemia right at the bad end of the scale. So, beans, pulses, lentils, green vegetables. You got things like magnesium and B vits that are used to make energy. And actually, magnesium's a really interesting one, because if you're stressed, your body actually gets rid of magnesium. And then if you don't have enough magnesium, it can cause anxiety and stress. So this like this vicious circle. So, I definitely recommend you get plenty of magnesium in your diet if you're feeling quite stressed. Even take a supplement. I think that's a really useful one.
That's really interesting. I didn't even think there would be a connection between low mood and a certain. Well, obviously, it's not all down to the mineral.
It's not all down to it, but it's interesting. I mean, it's almost like that supplement's just a bit of a cherry on the cake. Don't need to spend a lot of money. 375 milligrams a day supplement. Just try it. That's another thing with these things. Just try it for a month, see if it works. Couple of months, stop taking it, see if you notice a difference, and then yeah.
I think, like you said, I think one of the biggest challenges I have is the after lunch slump. I'm always like, I would do really well in the Spanish society. A 2 p.m. siesta sounds great.
Yeah, it's funny. My partner's actually Spanish, and I've had to get used to him going to sleep in the afternoon. And I'm like, this is just weird. It's London. It's weird. And I don't know how. The thing is, you've got to be really careful with that. So I wrote a book on sleep because I was really interested in it at one point.
Mm,
And, you can't fall into deep sleep. Otherwise, you get that horrible sleep inertia. So you don't want to have a nap for more than 20 minutes.
yeah.
And I think it was Nick Littlehales, who's an author on sleep. He says have a shot of coffee just before you go to sleep,
I was going to ask you about
and then it
this.
should kick in. Yeah, it should kick in. It's never worked for me,
No.
but it should kick in. I go for a sleep in the afternoon and I don't wake up for another 2 hours, and I feel
I
awful.
don't get these people that can do caffeine and then just pop off to sleep. I don't get it. I have to have like a 3 p.m. cutoff point where no caffeine after 3 p.m. Otherwise, I lay there till like 1 in the morning with the next big idea.
Yeah, the whole sleep topic's a whole other thing, but I think also we don't get enough sleep in this country. So I think, getting to grips with good sleep hygiene, thinking about the foods that you should be eating before bed and all that kind of stuff, magnesium foods, nice lean proteins that have got tryptophan that can sort of help you make melatonin and sleep and all that kind of thing. It's a bit of an offshoot of what we're talking
Yeah.
about, but it all kind of fits into the same idea of energy and tiredness.
Does it? Obviously, there's a big argument on the topic of sleep. But there's a big argument of like not eating close to the time you're going to sleep. Is that still a thing? Because I've always been intrigued by it because I always found I slept better if I'd had a big meal before sleep. But then the research says not to do that.
Yeah, I get a bit confused about this one, and this is my area of sort of work. So I always thought, so the idea was if you eat before you go to bed, your blood sugar goes up, it goes down, and then it wakes you up. I think that's what people are talking about. And I always thought that was only in people with type 2 diabetes or insulin sensitivity that would really happen. I think you wouldn't eat close to bed. I think if you suffered with indigestion, like think about the foods you eat. Don't eat really fatty foods, that kind of thing. But otherwise, I actually don't think. For me, I don't think it makes any difference. And I think it's quite good to eat certain foods before you go to bed. Like I said, if you have a protein with a carbohydrate, that carbohydrate helps you to take that tryptophan amino acid into the brain to make melatonin. So that's actually a useful technique, even if it's just a bowl of porridge or something. So again, I think it's down to the individual. If you eat before we go to bed and you sleep fine, then there's your answer.
Yeah.
If you eat before you go to bed and you don't sleep, there's your answer. And there's nothing more in it. And when someone says, "Oh God, I eat before bed and it keeps you awake," well, just don't eat before you go to
Yeah,
bed.
yeah. It's kind of
It's very simple.
tested, like we said earlier. It's kind of test your theories. If
Mm,
find out what works for you by going, okay, I did this for a week. It made me feel terrible. Let's try something different. If that makes you feel a little better, keep doing that. It's
yeah, definitely. And when I used to work with people that couldn't sleep, from a nutrition perspective, just keep a diary. Like it's the easiest way to sleep diary. Look what you're doing across the week. What are you eating before you go to bed? When did you have your last coffee? How much are you drinking before you go to bed? That's a big one that keeps people up, is alcohol. They think it's going to send them off to sleep, and it does make you quite soporific, but once you nod off, things happen in your body. It inhibits certain stages of your sleep. You get up to use the loo, or you get up to grab some water. It can prevent calcium ions from being released, which helps with your sleep. So there's all sorts of stuff going on with alcohol. But we like to think that it doesn't, but it does.
it helps you get off to sleep, or in some instances it does. And but then I suppose throughout the day, throughout the time you're asleep, you're just constantly dehydrating, and that's obviously that happens anyway. And then you add the alcohol on top, and it's like
Yeah.
that's why you wake up feeling like you've got a desert in your mouth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I find it makes me dehydrate, but it makes me quite anxious as well. I get a bit of heartburn, a bit anxious from drinking if I drink too much before I go to bed. So yeah, I try to just try not to do it.
On a bit of a strange one, the alcohol that I drink depends on what happens. Red wine is like a
Oh,
sleep.
really?
Yeah, red wine is like a sleeping pill. If you give me red wine,
Oh, red
yeah,
before bed. I've got a friend that says has got a little mantra for that.
yeah, yeah, red wine, and I'm straight off. Whereas any other alcohol doesn't really do that. So there you go.
Okay, there we go. Well, there must be something in it.
Um, but on the note of like, I think you pretty much answered this. But when we talk about like living in a very busy and tired society, obviously staying on top of your nutrition is really tricky when you're 100 an hour, whether it's because you've got kids, whether you're trying to run your own business, trying to do a day job and run a business, or just go to the gym. I think one of the big things is everyone tries to cram everything in. It's like social life, going to the gym, eating healthy,
Yeah.
going to work. It's a lot. Is there any advice you'd give? I know you briefly touched on it, but any advice you'd give to sort of help someone stay on top of it? Because I think the worry is that not everyone's got enough time to be able to be in the kitchen all the time, as much as most of us would love to.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I actually, I looked at your questions earlier, so just tried to jot down a few ideas, and I was thinking, well, planning is really good. So plan ahead. really think about what you're going to buy. Make sure there's stuff in your fridge. So if you are working late and you don't have a lot of time, there's something there that's really easy to prepare. I was thinking, understand healthy snacking. So make sure you got snacks to hand, because a lot of people, we don't have set. The whole idea of breakfast, lunch, and dinner was great when it was the 50s and 60s and everyone like had a set routine. We all live such different lives now, and meal times are scattered across the day. And I always say to clients, like, just keep something in your bag. Even athletes, like athletes have always got snacks in their bag, healthy snacks, so you just don't get caught short. You're better off having that than going hungry and then like stuffing your face with something because you're absolutely starving further off in the day.
Yep.
I think that if you're at home, batch cooking and freezing, great if you've got a family. That's a really good budget way to make
Yeah.
sure you create your own convenience. Taking the time to eat. I hear it so often, like, I haven't got time to eat. Everybody has got 5 or 10 minutes to sit down somewhere quiet and eat. And I don't mean at your desk or running down the road with a baguette hanging out your mouth. It's like, you can definitely find time in the day to sit and eat.
Yeah.
I think it's really good also to, if you're not going to take your lunch to work, have a good think about what's available to you on the high street. So you know where to go. Think about if you can walk into your local supermarket, like what can you buy to create a quick, healthy lunch? I used to work in an office and, I just get like some canned beans, canned tuna, some salad, a lemon, and I kind of created something healthy that way. So just understanding what you can do. You know, if you're at home, have a really simple repertoire of really easy dishes. I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing unhealthy about coming home and making some scrambled egg with mushrooms on a bit of toast. It's a really healthy, light dinner. And, it takes no time at all to make it. Manage your stress. Stress influences how we eat.
Yeah.
And obviously, with that busy lifestyle comes stress. So, really think about ways that you can manage that so that you're not stress eating or comfort eating or anything like that. And yeah, I think, and this is a bit of a weird one, but also like traveling. If you do work in an office and you're a busy sort of, well, who goes traveling? Executives, those kind of people, whatever it is, whatever
Yeah.
your life is.
CEOs.
Yeah. Let's call them CEOs. So, thinking about when you book your hotel, like, and if you go on holiday and you book your hotel, what's available to you in the hotel? We've all stayed at hotels and we're like, oh my God, we're in the middle of nowhere and there's no access to food. So, I do this with athletes actually
Yeah.
when they're going away for competition. Really have a look at where they're staying.
Yeah.
Is there a local supermarket nearby? Do you understand what to eat because you're going to China and you have no idea what any of that food is? Just educating people on like what's there so you don't get caught short.
I think that's something I always struggled with when going on training camps. It was like, what do you eat? What snacks do you take? How many snacks do you take? Like, I think as well, when I think back to my swimming days, I was very dependent on protein bars. And it was something I actually wanted to ask you about, because there's a lot of crap in protein bars. I mean, they still use them now. They're handy, they're convenient. But what's your view on like protein bars? I mean, we touched on supplementation a little bit earlier.
Yeah, protein bars. But I've got to be really careful what I say these days. So I'm going to kind of get myself out of any work. But my view is, so when I wrote the book, I was really shocked at like actually what it went into protein bars. And I think the biggest, talk to somebody from Holland Barrett, and it's like, what is bovine collagen for? And he went, oh, it's all the ligaments and stuff from the cow, and it gives you the bar, the chewiness. And that was the point that I stopped eating protein bars. So yeah, they contain lots of different proteins. They've got flavorings, all sorts of stuff. You've got to watch the sweeteners in them. They're called polyols. If you eat too many, they're a laxative. So you've got to really watch that. Saying all of that, if for convenience, if you're running from the gym or you're doing an event or training really hard and you need that 20 grams of protein post training and you've nowhere else to get it, then it's not such a bad thing. I think all these things have a place, right? I just don't think they need to be there twice a day as a snack if you're not even training in the gym or doing anything. I just don't really. I think there's better choices.
I think it's everyone's cheat of like they can have something chocolatey without having the guilt. I think that's a lot of people's rationale behind it. But then also
Yeah.
one chocolate bar once in a blue moon's not going to kill you.
Yeah, but I think what's really funny as well, and learning more about this UPF thing is, again, it's like the green powders. These are sold to us in a way that makes us feel like they're a health benefit because they've got a protein health claim on. So they're selling you this thing that everyone's obsessed with protein, right? They think that that's the new healthy.
Hmm.
So it's got protein on, so it must be healthy, you know. And they look amazing, and they all of that stuff makes you feel like there is a benefit to eating this and that you need it. You could buy two boiled eggs from the supermarket if you want, and a bagel, and you probably get the same amount of protein and carb that you need, you know, or a chocolate milk.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
chocolate milk with athletes all the time post training. It's a brilliant one. A bit of sugar, bit of milk, happy days from the protein, happy days. So it's just figuring out like, do you need it or not?
Yeah, as I say, I think it's just a convenience thing, and if you're struggling to get your protein in for the day, then it definitely has its place. Like one of the times I rely on it is like if you're at like events and speaking events and things like that, where you're just running around speaking to everyone.
Yeah.
Probably not the best thing going to that, not getting your minerals in, and then going, what? Yeah, why have I got a sore throat? Oh yeah, that would be why.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, look, they've got a time and a place, but I think that for me, the most people that take them are the people that think they're doing a lot of work in the gym, and they've got this thing in their head that they are really healthy. They go into the gym and they're sat at their desk eating that bar because they think it's a better alternative to chocolate. But you know, there's better healthy snacks to be had.
And also, I suppose the other thing as well is I look at the protein bars and go, there's not actually a lot of difference between a protein bar and a chocolate bar. Obviously, there is the added protein, but actually, you could probably balance it out throughout your day.
Yeah, and actually, that's a really good point because there's a protein bar that's like a supplement, you know, from these supplement brands. But then if you look at like Mars and Snickers, they all started producing a protein version of their chocolate bars. That is a
Yep.
chocolate bar, not a protein bar. It's a chocolate bar with added protein to give you a protein health claim, but it's full of sugar. It is full of sat fat. That's not a good option. If you're going to have a protein bar, get one from a person that makes a proper protein bar. That would be my advice.
And also remember that there's ligaments of an animal in there as well,
Yeah, when you're chewing it.
which is definitely going to be something that's going through my mind next
Sorry,
time
I've
I'm.
literally turned turned everybody off protein bars. So,
We touched on diet earlier. I wanted to ask, obviously, as we said, there's been a massive uptake in people that have adopted a vegan diet, whether it be for personal preference, whether it be for, I can't think of the word, but like for their own psychological benefit of
yeah,
not wanting to eat animals and everything else. I couldn't think of the word. I could have said
yeah.
that a lot better. But is there any diet that's healthier than another? Because I think one of the misconceptions with veganism, as we touched on earlier, is that you miss out on certain vitamins and minerals. But is there a diet that's stronger and healthier than another? I have a feeling I know
Yeah.
the answer.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to say everything in moderation. I'm going to try and be really inventive with this one. So I think the vegan diet is great, but I think that you need to do not everybody that you can get everything you need quite easily on a vegan diet. You just need to do a bit of planning, and it is really
Yeah,
healthy. We know that people on vegan diets get more antioxidant nutrients, the plant compounds. They get certain more vitamins, and there's some that they don't get more of if they don't plan it right, like iron.
yeah,
But on the whole, it's better, more fiber. The problem is now it's really easy to be an unhealthy vegan. The retro vegan, it's not as popular as it was. So people are living on UPFs, they're living on other types of processed foods, they're living on vegan brownies, and you know, crisps are still vegan friendly. So it's really easy to, yeah, still have a very unhealthy diet, even though you're vegan. It doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna be healthy. I think, like, for me, I like the flexitarian diet. I mean, I'm not prepared to give up meat because I like it. I try and buy really good quality meat and not eat as much of it. That's the way I'm taking it. I think we all need to eat a lot more plants in our diet. So if you can do that flexitarian thing, I think that's probably a really good place to be. Um, you know, the Mediterranean diet, we know that that's brilliant for our health. There's loads of research around heart health, brain health, all sorts of reduced risk of certain cancers, reduced risk of colorectal cancer from all the fiber. I mean, there's loads of stuff around that. So it's just like, the problem is not knowing like what a good diet is. The problem is getting people to follow it. That's all it is. You know, we're seduced by unhealthy food. And often we don't know what to do. A lot of people don't know what to do with those other healthy ingredients. I love canned beans and pulses and stuff, but I people don't know what to do with them and they think they taste bland. But I'm like, I can literally show you a dozen ways to make these taste amazing, right? You know, so yeah, it's tricky.
I think it comes back to that whole thing we said before of like people need to try stuff more. Because I've been very lucky growing up in a family where we're always having different foods. We're all just trying different things. I mean, I'm that weird kid that sees something weird on the menu and goes, "I'll have that." And I think that's how you make things interesting because you'll try something and go, "Oh, there's a lot of garlic and chili in there," or "There's something going on," and then you take that home to the kitchen and go, "Right, how did they do that? Let's figure
Yeah.
out how that works."
Yeah, definitely. And I think a good starting point with that is to invest in a few really good cookbooks. Like,
Yeah.
you can't go wrong with an Ottolenghi cookbook. I'm not being funny. I know a lot of it's quite faffy, but a lot of it help you to explain all those nice flavors, and he uses a lot of tahini and he uses loads of grains and all that kind of stuff. You can buy other cookbooks that aren't as complicated, but that kind of Israeli cuisine is really lovely. That's a really good one to get to. You know, looking for other nice vegetarian cookbooks, that kind of thing.
Yep.
You know, just have a little browse, look at the recommendations, see what people are recommending. But yeah, get a few really nice cookbooks out and just get really inspired. Is a good place. Yeah, it's a good thing to do.
Definitely. And on the subject of like trying more foods and eating different stuff, is there a certain food that people should steer clear from?
Yeah, so I don't like telling people not to eat certain foods. I don't really believe in demonizing foods or one food's like bad. I mean, there are obviously
Yep.
foods that are totally like rubbish, but I think the focus should be on just focusing on the foods you should be eating more of on your diet and try and make that your priority rather than worrying about, you know, you're eating too much of something or you have to avoid something. I just think focus on filling one step at a time, filling your diet with really good stuff. I think that's a better mind place to be than anything else. Yeah. I think it's really. I think there's too many people shaming food all the time and shouting about what you shouldn't eat. And you know, we don't want to live in a nanny state. You know, we live in a bit of a nanny state, and none of us like being told what to do. And I just don't think it goes down well when you're just telling people don't eat this, don't eat that. It's, you know, especially when people like me. I'm not going to tell people not to eat pizza because I eat pizza occasionally, and I eat Mars bars, and I eat ice cream, and I drink wine. It's like it's just getting the balance right.
I mean, that was something I was actually going to ask you. Was I found it when I started learning more about it from my swimming career. But do you find with the knowledge that you have, it taints your view on other foods? Because I definitely went through that journey of like knowing what was good and what was bad tainted what I was like. Oh, I could never eat pizza again. I could never do this again because I know that that food's not as good for me as this food. Have you? Yeah. What was your journey with that?
Yeah, I don't really. So the way I've always done it is like, okay, so take pizza for example. I always think if I have pizza, then you know I'll have it with a big salad, or I'll put something else on my pizza to make it a little bit healthy. So I'm all about kind of sort of pimping your food a little bit. I mean, I don't eat a
Yeah.
lot of rubbish food to be honest. Like I love the taste of healthy food, and I like
Yeah.
cooking, even if it's as basic as just a pasta with tomato sauce and something chucked in it, you know, whatever it is. I just like the taste of healthier food. But yeah, I tried to make the unhealthier food a bit better by teaming it with some healthy stuff. That's the way I approach it.
My biggest struggle was cheese. I realized how much was in cheese, and I was like, Jesus, like,
People love cheese, don't they? It's
yeah.
like a big thing. As a kid, I wouldn't eat anything unless it had cheese on. So my mum used to have to put cheese on everything, even a Sunday roast, to get me to eat it. But now I'm not a great fan of cheese. A bit of cheddar,
Oh,
fine, but the rest of it, no.
see, like I remember, my family. We used to travel out to Spain quite a lot, and we'd have these like meals where it was essentially like picky foods. You'd have your like chorizo, salami, and your cheeses and everything else. So I remember looking back at it once I sort of learned about how it worked and calories and everything else, and was going, Jesus, I must have been sinking like 3,000 to 4,000 calories in the one sitting.
Yeah, I mean, if you're fit, well, if you're fit and active, and you're young, if you're a young boy as well, I mean, boys just can, well, probably some girls as well, but you can just trough food down as a teenager. I was so skinny as a kid, and I just ate my mum out of house and home. So yeah.
Guilty. I think I wanted to ask: is there a certain food that you think people should eat more of? I know we've spoken about like vitamin D and things like that, and iron, particularly for females. Um, is there a certain food that people need to really start looking at eating more of?
So I'm a bit obsessed with fiber. I don't know why it's a big thing for me. I don't know. It's just when I read all the research, I'm like, why are people not eating more fiber? It's like cardioprotective. It protects you against colorectal cancer. It reduces the risk of it helps to remove cholesterol from the body, reduce risk of type 2 diabetes. But in this country, like so few people, like only 9% of women and like 12% of men, I think, or it might be the other way around, actually get the 30 grams a day. And I just don't, I think exploring beans, pulses, lentils, all those kind of foods, eating more veggies, switching to whole grains. I know it's a big ask because a lot of people don't like the taste of them. They find it a bit chewy, but I just think a few small changes because I just think that nutrient is so important in the diet. So for me, it's just ways to get that up. Not for everybody. If somebody's got IBS or they've got
I
some
was
other
gonna
issue,
say,
but
yeah.
then you're on a FODMAP diet maybe, which is taking out the fibers. But for general, most people, I just think it's for me. I think that's a really good one to focus on. And green vegetables, of course. I'm a nutritionist. I'm gonna have to say green vegetables. So
Gotta love your broccoli. Like
gotta
broccoli
love
is
your
king.
broccoli.
Oh, when I got into bodybuilding, I remember I lived off broccoli and tuna. That was my life.
God, that sounds really depressing. I was the same when I was in the gym trying to get really
Yeah,
bulky at one point. So boring.
I. Oh no, but then again, I still to this day stand by tuna, broccoli, and a little bit of lemon. That was a winner.
Oh yeah,
That was a
nice,
winner.
nice. Bit of olive oil. Sounds a
But
bit
there you go.
dry.
Yep, yep. Olive oil. It was good. But I was going to ask actually. You mentioned about IBS. Obviously, we've seen a big increase in the amount of people that have IBS or struggling with IBS symptoms.
Mm.
How have you sort of adapted your approach of like clients and stuff to manage that?
To be honest with you, I don't really deal with a lot of that. I think that if you've got a issue, gut health issue, I think you need to see someone that's more specialist. And I think you need a proper gut health dietitian or a specialist in gut health or visit your GP. I think you can't, when this is a good bit of advice actually, when you go to see nutritionists, not all nutritionists know everything about everything. Somebody came to me the other day, she'd had long COVID and she was having all sorts of problems with the gut and the doctors couldn't figure it out. And I had to pass her on to someone else because there's only so much you can do. And I can
Yeah,
give you advice on, if you could use a probiotic or foods that might be less irritating on your gut. But if you need a specific like FODMAP diet, for example, you really need to seek out somebody that knows what they're doing. And also don't try and do it yourself. It's complicated. So, but there are a rise. I think gut health is massive. I've mentioned a few bits about UPF. Some people are saying that some of those ingredients might be to blame for the rise in gut issues. You
yeah.
know, maybe some more research on that will evolve in the future. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's not really my specialism.
No, that's fair enough. But I think I'd be intrigued to see if synthetics and all these like synthetic foods that we're having have an impact, and that is that's my suspicion, but that's just as an average Joe looking at it and guessing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's quite interesting, all this stuff. I think we've all read Chris Van Tolleken's book, and, it's quite extreme, all the examples he gives, and a great, it's written so brilliantly about the science that's available, but, still waiting for things to become more concrete and more findings, and whether or not the food industry stands in the way of any of that actually happening, who knows? So, yeah.
I think some of the diet stuff that's out at the moment, like some of the series that have been released recently, I think there's a lot in there that's amazing information, but I think it's also really scary for your average Joe because it's like, whoa, I didn't realize this, and yeah, it can end up in a
Yeah.
bit of a hole.
I think also what's really difficult is I write a lot in the papers and stuff like that. And, often the papers report research findings, but sometimes those research findings are very early on and they don't really explain to you the full study. And it's really
Yeah,
hard for you to get your head around. If you're not trained in reading a scientific paper, you're never going to know
yeah,
that. But you could be given information that's a very small study on a few rats
yeah,
that's proven that isn't really proving cause or effect. But the paper's making it sound like that is actually going to happen
Yeah.
to you if you eat
Yeah.
this. And then the next month, it's the opposite story because a new bit of research has come out. So my advice is definitely to take all of that with a pinch of salt and just stay in your lane and just focus on eating focus on just eating well and, you know, pay lip service to a lot of that other stuff.
I think that plays exactly to what we were speaking earlier of like there's so much information out there. You could start going, right, I'm gonna go down this route, and I could purposely go looking for something that contradicts that and quite easily find it.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is with research, you can find research just to prove anything. You can cherry pick research to literally prove anything that you're talking about. So, but people that read papers that aren't trained in science wouldn't know that. So,
Yeah, definitely. And talking about the work that you do, I did want to touch on your book, which
mm.
you've recently released, which is Unprocess Your Life. Can you tell us a bit more about it? Because, like, I'm also intrigued by the journey of writing it as well, because I think people don't realize the work that goes into writing a book. And it's something I've debated myself. Not sure what I'd write it on because I'm not a specialist in any area, but yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah, there is. Every time I write a book, I always say I'm never writing another book, and then my ego that gets the better of me, and I write another book. Yeah, they are really hard. It's really tough, and I didn't get a lot of time to write this one. And originally, it was just meant to be a cookbook that had
Yeah.
homemade versions of commonly found UPF foods. So there's a big section in the back on how to make your own oat milk, tomato ketchup, all sorts of different sauces that you might regularly find in your kitchen. And then, I show you how to make your own pot noodle and, your own chicken tikka masala and all
Lovely.
these kind of dishes, yeah, that you
Yeah,
would normally buy. And I wanted to show people how easy it is to make yourself your own bread. I mean, I started making bread. I found I created a very easy recipe to make bread. And then it evolved into being more about how do you live an unprocessed life. So, I thought I knew how to batch cook, but when I started doing it, I thought, oh my God, I was making tomato ketchup, but I didn't have the right container, was putting stuff in the freezer and it was all going frosty on the top. So I wrote a section on that, I did a bit on freezing. I gave a really overview introduction to UPS. What are they, what to look out for, how to read the label. But this isn't a heavy science book. This is just an introduction to UPS and some general advice on how you can start to cut them down in your diet. Because since I wrote the book, loads more conversations have evolved around this. Not all
yeah,
UPFs are the same. Weetabix are a UPF because they've got barley malt extract, which is just a flavouring to give them a malty taste, and they've got vitamins and minerals. That is not the same as Frosties, right? So within
yeah,
that category, you have to somehow navigate that to try and make a healthy choice. I mean, I got slated a bit because I went on TV on Monday and I tried to do a supermarket UPF, like what is the best option? Because as well, not everybody wants to go home and make stuff. So if you've got two
yeah,
things
yeah,
in the supermarket, what is the better option? You're better off getting a plain crisp to a Pringle, or instead of a can of Tango, looking for one of those botanical drinks. So it was just about trying to give people something that's a bit more realistic, because I really believe that you don't have to cut all these foods out of your diet. You can have some of
yeah,
them, and then sometimes it's about picking the best one you can. People on a budget that buy white bread for their family, you can't tell them to go and buy sourdough at £4 a pop. It's just not
yeah,
doable, right?
yeah,
That's going to
yeah,
cost you
yeah,
30 quid a week in bread. So, for those people, they need to know that they're not doing anything wrong by choosing that bread, but maybe there's another part of their diet that they can focus on to make a bit healthy and make less UPF. So the book's really helping people to navigate that. What can you do? Where do you start? So,
I think as well, like people need to relax in terms of we've all been in situations where the ideal food isn't available,
mm,
and you have to go with the best decision you've got, and that goes into life as well. Like with everything we've got going on with the cost of living crisis and everything
mm,
going on there, it plays a massive part, and people need to stop. We're in a big culture where everyone beats themselves up.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
constant. There's always like, oh, I'm not doing this right, or I'm not doing this part of my life right. No one is. Like,
No, no. No, no one is. Everyone's yeah, and I think that's really important for families and mums as well. I get quite a lot of mums on my social media that have bought the book and they're really worried about their kids. What am I giving my kids? I can't afford to buy all this types of food. And it's like giving them some really quick and easy budget recipes that they can use to feed their family, and understanding how to batch cook and everything else. I was talking to a friend the other day about, what about food banks? People that have to get food given to them. If that's white
Yeah.
bread and canned foods and that's all they've got, you can't leave them feeling like they're suddenly less healthy and they're going to die of eating
Yeah.
UPFs. There needs to be some a bit of reality in this, so the whole thing doesn't become a privilege thing that you can only afford to not eat
Yeah.
UPS if you've got loads of money. And I don't think
Yeah.
that, you don't want it to become that. It's, you just need some really nice, practical, good advice for everybody.
Uh, 100% agree. And I think on that note, I want to ask the last question that I ask every guest, which is, what is one piece of politically correctness that you really strongly agree with or disagree with?
Yeah, I didn't really have a politically correctness thing, but I guess in a society thing, I have found it very frustrating that your number of social media follows this day dictates your qualification. So
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
industry, I've been doing this for 20 years. I have 3 degrees. I've got a lot of experience, and I get turned down from work because I don't have enough followers. And sometimes I think the way that my industry is headed, I find that a bit frustrating. Um, it's like followers equals everything these days. And I find that quite hard to get my head around.
No, I see it all the time. Like, I work in the creator disability space, and you see it all the time of also the bigger followers tend to have this like almost untouchable status.
Yeah.
And like, I think we need to go back down to the whole, you remembering that people were smaller uh at their point, at starting point anyway. It's the same thing with the gym analogy of like, I hate the whole, you've only been in the gym for, look at this newbie in the gym. I hate that mentality, when I'm like, that was you 5 years ago, so shush.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think there needs to be more, for my industry, there needs to be more governing, because, people that are then responsible for getting messages
Yeah.
out have not ever, some of them have never really worked. They've just built their career around social media. And I think that there needs to be, I think there needs to be more expert led a little bit.
Yeah, and the more governing of the information, it's like, the obviously it's a very taboo subject at the moment. It's like me and my friend were having a conversation about the movement towards legalized cannabis and CBD. There's actually issues with social media with that, and I think that's where, like you say, in all of these industries where they're great as long as you speak to someone that knows what they're talking about, and also, but then I think some of the onus is on people to do their own research.
Yeah, but they're quite believable. I think sometimes, a lot of these guys, especially in nutrition, they're not even qualified in nutrition, but they know if they shout loudly and they say something that's slightly sensational, they'll get traction with that with people, because people love it. It
Mm.
might not be right, and it might just confuse people even more. So I think you need to be a bit wise about what you're listening to, and not everything's a controversy. So.
I think as well, nutrition's a really tricky one, and I know I've probably fallen into this trap during the episode as well. Of like, every gym head ever thinks they're the next big nutrition expert. Like, yeah, you should be doing this, and actually, you're not.
Yeah, well, the thing with nutrition is, like, everybody probably does know it. I think the job of a nutritionist is help you to put that into action in the context of your life. And I think that's the bit that's the tricky bit for everybody. We all know what we should and shouldn't be eating intrinsically, but it's understanding, how to make that work for you. And I think that's where somebody with experience comes in to help you to do that.
100%.
Yeah.
And just to finish off, I always give my guests the chance to plug. So where can people find you? Where can they find your book? Obviously, I will link it all below, but just
Yeah.
if people are listening, where can they find you?
Okay, so you can find my book on Amazon or in the shops, Waterstones, Double X Smiths. My website is robhobson.co.uk, and my Instagram handle is robhobsonnutritionist.
Love that. Love that. Thank you
Brilliant.
so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure. No worries. Thanks, Charlie.